The dining room at Cedar Point Lodge smelled like wood smoke and butter, and Diane Whitfield had eaten breakfast there every morning for 4 days, without once looking up from her coffee long enough to notice who else was in the room. That was about to change. Robert and Tyler had left before sunrise, tackle boxes rattling in the back of the rental car, arguing cheerfully about which cove held the better base. Diane had waved them off from the porch in her robe, coffee in hand, grateful for a morning that belonged to no one but her. She'd almost skipped breakfast. She was glad, later, that she hadn't. The man at the corner table had his back to her at first, gray at the temples, a flannel shirt rolled to the elbow. Something about the set of his shoulders snagged at her, the way an old song catches you off guard in a grocery store. Before you know the name of it, you know the feeling. Then he turned to signal the waitress, and Diane's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. Michael. 31 years. She would have known him at 80. He hadn't seen her yet. She had a choice, in that moment, a real one, though she wouldn't understand how real until later. She could take her coffee back to the room. She could let the morning stay simple. She stood up instead. "Michael Doyle," she said, and her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I don't believe it." His head turned. For a second, just a second, his face was blank, searching. Then it broke open like something unlocking. "Diane." He said her name like he was testing whether it still fit in his mouth. "Diane Caraway. Whitfield now." She held up her left hand, a little too fast, a little too much like proof. "Married." "Right. Of course." He glanced at the ring, then back at her face, and something in his expression settled, like a man putting down a bag he'd been carrying without noticing the weight. 20-some years, I'd guess. Knowing you. 22. To anyone I know? Robert. You wouldn't have met him. She sat back down without quite deciding to, and somehow he was pulling out the chair across from her, and somehow that felt like the most natural thing in the world, though nothing about it was natural at all. "You look exactly the same," he said. "I look like a 58-year-old woman who spent 4 days in the sun without enough sunscreen." "You look exactly the same," he said again, quieter, like he meant it more the second time. Diane looked down at her coffee. Her heart was doing something foolish and fast, something she hadn't felt in longer than she wanted to admit, and she didn't like how easily her body remembered him when her mind had spent 3 decades believing it had let him go. "What are you doing here, Michael?" "Anniversary trip. Or it was going to be." His jaw tightened, just slightly. "Ellen passed. 14 months ago now. Cancer." "Oh." The word came out small. "I'm so sorry." "I almost canceled the reservation. Then I thought, hell, if I'm going to sit alone somewhere, may as well be somewhere with a view." He turned his coffee cup a quarter turn, not drinking from it. "Didn't expect the view to include you. Small world." "Smaller than you'd think. I've thought about looking you up. Never did it." He looked at her directly then, and there was nothing careless in it. "Wasn't sure I had the right." Diane felt the question underneath the words and didn't know what to do with it, so she reached for something safer. "How long has it been?" Since my father got transferred and I got dragged to Ohio kicking and screaming at 22. A faint smile. 31 years in September. I remember because I wrote you every week for the first 2 months. Then the letters stopped coming back." "I never got any letters, Michael." He went still. "I wrote you first," Diane said, "twice. When I didn't hear back, I figured you'd moved on, found someone there. I figured the same about you." They looked at each other across the table, and 31 years compressed into something you could hold in your hand. A small, aching thing. A story that had never gotten to finish itself. "Well," Diane said, too briskly, pushing back from the table because she needed to move, needed air, needed something to do with her hands that wasn't reaching for his. "That's quite a thing to find out over eggs." "Diane." She stopped. "I'm not trying to stir anything up," he said, and the honesty in his voice made it worse, not better. It's good to see you. It's really good to see you." "It's good to see you too," she said, and meant it more than she wanted to. "You have a husband. You have a life. This is an old friend from a long time ago. That's all this is." She almost believed herself. "Diane?" Robert's voice carried across the dining room, cheerful and loud, entirely unaware of the room he was walking into. Tyler trailed behind him with a stringer of fish and the particular smugness of a 26-year-old who'd won an argument with his father. "You will not believe the morning we had." Diane turned, and for one disoriented second, she couldn't remember how to arrange her face. "Robert." She stood, crossing to him, letting him kiss her cheek. The familiar smell of sunscreen and lake water grounding her, even as some other part of her stayed rooted at the corner table. You won't believe it, Michael Doyle. We knew each other in college, before I met you." Robert extended a hand. Easy, uncomplicated, the way he did everything. Small world. Robert Whitfield. "Michael." A handshake, brief and correct. If Michael felt anything watching Robert's hand rest at the small of Diane's back, he didn't show it. Diane, watching him not show it, felt something twist in her chest that she had no name for and didn't want one. "We were just catching up," Diane said, and the sentence felt like it belonged to someone else. 31 years, if you can believe it. That's wild. Robert clapped Michael on the shoulder, entirely without agenda. A man who had never in his life imagined a wife's old boyfriend as anything but a footnote. "You staying here through the week?" "Through Sunday," Michael said. "We should get a drink sometime. Diane can bore us both with stories from before I knew her." Robert grinned, already turning toward Tyler and the cooler of fish, already 3 steps ahead into the rest of his morning. "You coming, hun? Tyler wants to show you the pictures." "In a minute," Diane said. Robert nodded, unbothered, and walked off toward the porch with his son, and Diane watched him go with an ache she couldn't place. Not guilt exactly, not yet, but something adjacent to it, something that felt like standing at the edge of 2 lives at once. When she turned back, Michael was watching her. "He seems like a good man," he said. "He is?" "I meant that. I'm not saying it to be polite." "I know." She gathered her cardigan around her shoulders, suddenly needing the conversation to end, before it became something she couldn't take back. "I should go. He'll want Diane." Michael's voice dropped, quieter now that Robert was out of earshot. He wasn't smiling anymore. "I know how this looks. I know I have no right to ask for anything from you. But I've got 4 more days here, and I don't know when I'll see you again after that. Maybe never." "Michael, there's a little coffee place down past the boat launch. Quiet. I go most mornings around 8, before it gets crowded." He held her gaze, and there was nothing forward in it. Nothing she could point to and call improper. And that was exactly what made it so hard to look away. "Same room I always used to find you in, if you remember how that worked. Same time tomorrow?" Diane stood there with her cardigan clutched at her collar, the dining room noise fading around her. 31 years and 22 years, balanced on some invisible scale she hadn't known she was carrying. I don't know if that's a good idea, she said. I know, Michael said. I'm asking anyway. She didn't answer. She turned and walked toward the porch, toward Robert, toward Tyler's fish pictures, and the rest of an ordinary morning. And she still hadn't said yes. She hadn't said no, either. She told herself she wasn't going. She told herself that at 6, when she woke before the alarm and lay staring at the ceiling fan, turning slow circles above the bed. She told herself that at 7, brushing her teeth, watching her own eyes in the mirror like she was checking for evidence of something. She told herself that at 7:40, pulling a cardigan over her shoulders. Just to walk, just to clear her head, Robert wouldn't even be up yet. By 8, she was standing outside a coffee shop with a hand-painted sign that read, "The Bait and Brew," telling herself nothing at all. Michael was at a table by the window, 2 coffees already in front of him. One black, one with cream. He'd remembered, or guessed, or maybe just gotten lucky. He stood when he saw her, and for a moment neither of them said anything, and the not saying anything felt louder than words would have. "You came," he said. "I'm here for coffee," Diane said. "That's all this is." "Understood." He pulled out her chair. "Sit down before the coffee's cold and ruins my whole argument." She sat. The cream was right. She noticed and hated that she noticed and drank it anyway. "How's Tyler?" Michael asked. "Robert's boy." "Good. Sweet kid, actually. Took some getting used to at first. His mother and Robert split up when Tyler was 6. I came into the picture 2 years after that." Diane wrapped both hands around the mug. "It wasn't easy, some years, being the woman who wasn't his mother. We got there. You always were good at getting there, wherever there was. You say that like you knew me for longer than 2 years. 2 years at 20 was longer than 10 years is now." He said it simply, without drama, and it landed somewhere low in her chest. "You remember how we met?" "The library. You knocked my books off the return cart, apologizing for something you hadn't even done yet. I was trying to get your attention, and it was the only plan I had. It worked. Barely." He smiled, and 31 years fell off his face for just a second, and she saw the boy at the library cart, clumsy and certain all at once. "You made me wait 6 weeks before you'd let me walk you anywhere." "I made you work for it." "You did." His smile faded into something quieter. "I've thought about that a lot, the last year or so. Who made me work for things? Ellen never had to. We just fit from the start. Easy. I loved her for 30 years, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend I didn't." He turned his cup a slow quarter turn, a habit she was starting to recognize. "But there's a difference between easy and I don't know how to explain it without sounding like I'm about to say something I shouldn't say." "Then maybe don't say it." "Fair enough." They sat in that silence a moment, the kind that used to be comfortable between them and now had teeth in it. "Why didn't you write again?" Diane asked. She hadn't planned to ask it. It came out anyway. 31 years of wondering behind it. "After the first 2 letters, if you never got mine, why not just try again?" Michael was quiet long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. "Because my mother told me you'd started seeing someone," he said finally. "Some fraternity boy. I believed her because I wanted a reason to stop hurting, and that was the easiest one available. There was no fraternity boy, Michael. I know that now." He looked at her, and there was an old, plain grief in it that had nothing to do with Ellen. "I spent a long time being angry at a version of you that never existed, and I never once considered that you might have been standing by a mailbox same as me, wondering why I'd gone quiet." "I did," Diane said, quieter than she meant to. "For months." Something crossed his face, not triumph, nothing that simple. Something closer to mourning. Mourning for the two people at 22 who'd lost each other over nothing at all. A mother's lie and a boy's wounded pride, and an ocean of unforgivable silence that had turned out to be built on sand. "I'm not telling you this to make either of us feel worse," he said. I wanted you to know it wasn't nothing, what we had. It wasn't some college thing I outgrew. It was the realest thing I had, until Ellen, and even then. Michael, I know." He held up a hand, stopping himself. "I know what I sound like." Outside, a boat motor coughed to life somewhere down at the launch. A family walked past the window, kids trailing fishing nets, entirely unaware they were walking past the edge of something. Diane watched them go and thought of Robert, still asleep at the lodge, trusting her enough not to ask where she'd wandered off to this early. "I should get back," she said. "I know." He didn't argue it. That, somehow, made it harder to leave. "Diane, don't!" "I'm not going to say anything you don't want to hear. I promise you that." He reached across the small table then, slow, deliberate, his hand coming to rest near hers. Not on it. Not yet. Just close enough that she could feel the warmth of it. Close enough that the last half-inch between them felt like the only inch that mattered. "I just wanted one honest conversation with you before this week is over. That's all I'm asking for. That's the whole of it." Diane looked down at his hand, hovering there, patient, uncertain of its welcome. She didn't move her hand away. She didn't move it toward him either. "There's a bonfire tonight," she heard herself say. "Down by the water. Robert and Tyler are going into town for supplies. Some errand. I don't even know what." Her voice had gone strange to her own ears, too careful, too measured, a woman picking her way across ice. "I might take a walk. After." Michael's hand didn't move. Neither did hers. "I might be down by the water, too," he said. Diane stood up fast then, chair scraping, cardigan gathered tight, the half-empty coffee going cold between them. "I have to go," she said. "Diane." She stopped at the door, hand on the frame, not turning around. "I never stopped wondering," Michael said behind her. Quiet, unhurried, the words landing somewhere she couldn't protect herself from. 31 years, and I never once stopped wondering what would have happened if my mother had kept her mouth shut. Diane stood there a long moment, the morning sun bright and ordinary through the glass door, the whole rest of her life waiting for her back at the lodge. "Don't wonder out loud," she said. "Not to me. Not tonight." She walked out before he could answer, and she didn't let herself look back through the window to see his face, because she was afraid of what she'd do if she saw, in it, exactly what she was feeling herself. The bonfire crackled orange against the dark, and Diane stood near the edge of the firelight with a blanket around her shoulders, watching sparks lift into a sky gone thick with stars, and telling herself she'd stay 10 more minutes and then go back to the cabin. Robert and Tyler's truck had rumbled off toward town an hour ago, headlights swinging away down the gravel road. Robert leaning out the window to holler that they'd bring back marshmallows, even though the bonfire was clearly already stocked with them. Diane had waved until the taillights disappeared, and something in her chest had gone tight and guilty watching him go, trusting her with an evening he didn't know needed watching. She heard Michael before she saw him, footsteps in the sand, unhurried, and then he was beside her, hands in his jacket pockets, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "You came," he said, echo of the morning. "I said I might." "You did." He looked at the fire, not at her, and she was grateful for that, grateful for a moment to breathe before she had to hold his eyes. "Walk with me?" She should have said no. She thought about saying no for the length of exactly one breath, and then she was walking beside him, away from the fire, down toward the dark line where the lake met the sand, the noise of the bonfire fading behind them into the sound of small waves and their own footsteps. Neither of them spoke for a while. The silence wasn't empty. It was full, the way a held breath is full. "I used to think about this lake," Michael said finally. "Not this one. The one back home. We used to walk out past the dock at night, remember? You'd take your shoes off even when it was freezing. I still do that." I figured. A small smile, there and gone in the dark. Some things don't change, I guess. Their arms brushed. An accident, or not quite an accident, and neither of them moved away from it. Diane felt the warmth of his sleeve against hers, and was aware of it the way you're aware of a held breath, sharp and total. "Michael." "I know." He stopped walking. She stopped too, close enough now that stopping felt like its own decision. "I know I shouldn't have asked you to come down here. I knew it this morning, and I know it now. And I did it anyway. Because I'm 59 years old, and I've buried a wife, and I'm done pretending I don't know what I want." "Don't." Her voice came out thin. "I'm not asking you to leave him. I would never ask that of you." His voice was low, steady, terrifyingly gentle. "I'm asking you to tell me you don't feel what I've been feeling since you sat down across from me yesterday morning. Tell me that, and I'll walk you back to that fire, and I won't say another word about it. I mean that." Diane looked up at him. The firelight was far behind them now, and the only light was the moon on the water and something in his face that she recognized from 31 years ago, undimmed, unreasonably alive. She should have said the words. They were right there. She didn't say them. "Diane." Her name in his mouth again, quieter this time, almost a question. His hand came up slowly, giving her every chance to step back, and rested against her jaw, his thumb tracing the line of it like he was checking that she was real. Her heart was pounding so hard, she thought he must be able to hear it over the water. "This is a mistake," she whispered. "I know," he said, and didn't move his hand. The space between them closed the way water closes over a dropped stone, quiet, and then complete. His mouth met hers, careful at first, like a question still being asked, and for one long, suspended moment 31 years, folded down to nothing at all, to the boy at the library cart, to every letter that never arrived, to every year she'd told herself she'd let this go. Then guilt hit her like cold water, and she pulled back, breathing hard, her hand pressed flat against her own chest, as though she could hold her heart still by force. "I can't," her voice broke on it. "I can't do this. Diane." "No." She stepped back another pace, putting real distance between them now, the sand shifting under her feet. "I have a husband. I have a life, Michael. A whole life. 22 years of it. And I just—" She pressed her fingers to her mouth, and it wasn't triumph she felt, or even simple longing. It was grief, sharp and disorienting, grief for a version of herself that might have existed if a lie hadn't traveled between two mailboxes 31 years ago. "I have to go. Diane, wait. Don't follow me." She was already walking, fast, back toward the firelight, arms wrapped around herself against a cold that had nothing to do with the night air. "Please, just don't." She didn't look back. She could feel him standing there in the dark behind her, not following, exactly as she'd asked. And somehow his stillness was worse than if he'd chased after her, because it meant he understood.